storytelling is a big part of Appalachian culture. Whether it's sitting on a front porch or a song around a campfire, storytelling connects generations over shared experiences. However, there is one group whose story is a little undertold, which is why I'm here with Park Ranger Antoine Fletcher, who's been documenting both the joy and struggles of African American experience in the Great Smokies. Antoine, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, who were the first African Americans to come to the Smokies and when did they get here?
So we know that African Americans came to the Smokies around 1542. They got here through the transatlantic slave trade, which is a slave trade throughout the world where enslaved Africans were brought to places like this region. You would have been separated from your families, sold like cattle, that's why they called it chattel at these slave trades, and then moved several hundred miles to a place like the Smokies. And would have been really rough because you've never been here before. If you're coming from a place like Guinea in West Africa, this is much different. The climate, the mountains, much different from West Africa. They would have been on these very small plantations, probably about 12 to 14 slaves with an enslaver or an overseer. They would have been over them their entire lives. And a lot of these people would have gave birth on the plantations, and they would have died on the plantations as well. But during that time, those enslaved people would have learned a lot of different trades. So they would have learned things like woodsman and craftsmanship, how to farm, how to guide people, how to even run hotels. They even did a little bit of mining for gold in North Carolina.
What about any artifacts or anything that we can physically see that's in the park?
What we do have here are cemeteries. We have over 150 registered cemeteries that the Smokies take care of, and there are several cemeteries with enslaved Africans buried in those cemeteries. So cemeteries such as Mingus Mill or the enslaved cemetery of Mingus Mill that we went to earlier, you will have a tangible source or artifact where you can see, such as headstones that was left behind. Also, you have current culture that impacts that as well. So in the park, you may see coins at enslaved cemeteries, and these coins are left behind by people today to help Africans actually move on, because that's one of those cultural things that they had. So when they came from West Guinea or Guinea, West Africa, when they came here, they held on to that, where when they died, they needed some kind of offering to the underworld to move on to heaven, even though they were still deeply entrenched or in culture in Christianity.
So, after the Civil War and emancipation, how did the lives of African Americans here change?
All they knew was this area. All they knew was farming or enslavement at the time. So those people would have probably, went to different sharecroppers or different people, and they would have worked worked at farms and things such as that nature. A lot of the documents called them farmhands. Something else that would have happened that we know of is anyone that served in the Civil War, including black men, would have had pensions. And so they had pensions, so they had a stream of income, but also with these pensions came pension records. And so that's how we've learned more about African Americans, because these men, after the Civil War, would have had to go to a judge and say, I have a wife, I have kids, I served, I was mustered in Knoxville, and now we have more records for them. Also during Reconstruction, they would have ran for office. They would have had obviously a lot more freedom, but they also would have had those times where they could practice those trades that they learned throughout their lives. So building homes and things such as that nature. They would have started businesses as well.
So, Ranger Antoine, what are some ways that African Americans have impacted culture here in Appalachia that we can see today?
I would say definitely by the art. Art is so important. African Americans have been artists since they were in Africa, and they would have brought those concepts with them. I really can think about the National Park Service itself. Here we have the story of the Minguses, 3 generations of Minguses that we've learned so much from. But Charles Mingus Sr. actually served as a buffalo soldier, and what buffalo soldiers used to do as they used to help expand the American West. So they fought against indigenous tribes and things such as that nature, but also there were some of the first park rangers in some of the national parks that we know of today.
Oh, wow.
And then music. The music that we listen to, the music, the retro music of bluegrass and things that make you, you know, stomp and clap your hands. The African Americans here were always playing those instruments and deeply rooted into that. And even today, you still can find bluegrass African American groups throughout the region.
So how do you balance between the struggle and the joy of the experience? Because there is a lot of struggle, but at the same time, like, people were just living their lives. They fell in love. They had kids. They, you know, they grew old together. There was still they were still living their lives here. How do you balance those two things when you tell these stories?
Well, because it's a story and you have to have both things. And even in our lives, you know, for the kids watching today or whoever's watching, you go through the same thing, struggle and joy. Not everything works out. Yes, there were great times, and a lot of those times happened because of family and community, but also there were really harsh and hard times. And enslavement is a really hard time. But even during that time, the harshest, you know, measurements of slavery, they still were able to, you know, the good things about that is if they were able to raise their children and their children wasn't sent to another plantation, you know. I can only imagine just coming together for someone's birthday. I can even only imagine really being able to celebrate someone's death, where during enslavement, you may not see that person again, but maybe in this one instance, you can actually honor those people. So I think the most important thing is for us to never leave anything out. We tell the full story in the National Park Service.
Well, Ranger Antoine, thank you so much for teaching me about this incredible community that's grown up, that's been here for hundreds of years.
Yeah, well, hey, you're welcome, and always come back to your national park.
Want to learn more about our national parks? Then hit that subscribe button, friend. Stay up to date and catch bonus features by following us on Instagram @OutSCIder.